All right, so let's get started. Tonight for our masterclass, the topic is really very interesting. I think it's very interesting. It can be kind of complex, and but I really try to break things down and not get too caught up in the terms that we use in yoga and Ayurveda. So I want to relate a lot of these concepts to you in a way that makes sense. So I sent an email out and I said, tonight we're talking about the three qualities of the mind, and they're known as the gunas. You'll hear about them. They're really actually quite important. It's something that if you were to come in for an Ayurvedic consultation, I would assess the gunas. I would try to figure out what is going on with those forces. So, what are the gunas? Well, first of all, let's just talk about how this all relates to yoga. So, yoga, in and of itself, what it does is it strengthens our self sufficiency and it makes us more independent. And it's really part of our human experience to want to be free. We want freedom. We desire that very much. And we're always evolving and growing and moving towards that. So when you have an experience where you're not having freedom or you're experiencing restriction, what is it that you want? Your deeper desire is to want that freedom. But what happens in life is many of us become dependent on people in our lives, such as our parents, our partners, therapists, counselors, teachers, gurus, and even substances and drugs. And there's lots of things that we can get become dependent on. And I just want to let you know that I am referring to material that you can definitely look up and read. It's from the book called The Heart of Yoga by Des Kachar. And the tradition that I'm using and I'm under is the tantric tradition. And I just want to let you know that it's a fantastic topic to learn about. But what I want to tell you is with all of those things and all of those people that we become dependent on, they might give you good advice, but in the end, you know, our best judgment of our actions is ourselves, because no matter what, nobody's more interested in me than me. So nobody's more interested in you than you. It's something to think about. Nobody knows what's really in your heart. Nobody knows what's really going on, only you. So the power really is within each of us. So this all ties into actions. Actions. So gunas, what they are qualities of mind. There are forces that influence us. That's what they are. They're actual forces that are moving throughout us. And so what is it that's happening? What are these forces? Well, we have to talk about action. Every time you do something, something else is going to happen. So I do this, that happens. I do that, that happens. So there's a consequence to every action. And how do we prevent actions that have a negative result? Well, we would do what we call reflection. It's also called dhyana. And dhyana can be as simple as imagining the outcome of a decision or a choice. So you take the time to put yourself into an objective state and consider your possible decision with an open mind. Um, and with reflection, we can find better ways of making decisions and understanding our behavior. And all of that's important. Another method of managing our actions is to distance ourselves from them. And it's like doing something else, like going for a walk or going out to tea or coffee or going to a concert. Doing something that creates a healthy distraction can give us distance, and also it can calm the mind because it's a healthy distraction. Also, doing other activities than what we would normally do. So when you have a behavior that you normally tend to participate in and it ends up having a negative result for you, choosing a different behavior. So another method of reflection is to bring distance and objectivity to what you're doing by doing a different activity. And also just considering other outcomes. What are the other outcomes? If I were to do this, what would happen? If I were to do that, what would happen? So, what we're talking about is when we experience suffering and pain and restrictions due to mental limitations. And by the way, the gunas are related to the qualities of mind. And that's why we're talking about all of this. So, what happens when you have qualities of mind that create negativity, right? What happens? So, when we have pain, suffering, mental limitations, even if we're not experiencing like tears and major trauma from those restrictions and that pain, there's still going to be disturbing feelings deep within us. And to understand suffering, we need to understand the qualities of the mind. And they're described in yoga and in Ayurveda as the gunas. The first one is called tamas, Tamas. And tamas is a heaviness. It's a state of mind that is heavy and slow, and it gives us a feeling of lethargy. So, for example, if you knew you had to do something, like say you had to go, I'll give the example that's in the book. Say you knew you had to do a talk or a speech, and the whole idea of that makes you feel lethargic and heavy, and you like getting sleepy. You literally start having actual physiological response in the body due to the heaviness of your thinking. Okay, so that's tamas. It creates heavy, slow thinking. It's lethargy. The next quality of mind is called rajas, Rajas, and it describes a quality of mind through action. But it's not just any action, it's action that is restless and raciness. And we see this a lot, by the way, you guys, because people are so overstimulated. And the way that they keep themselves in dysfunction is to do, go, do, go. They just go from one activity to the next, so they don't have to stop and think about things. They don't have to stop and actually feel the pain and the suffering, right? So rajas is a quality of mind through action, and it creates a feeling of restlessness, raciness. It's like a do response to whatever it is that you have to do or the things that you need to do. So if you're relating to the same example of needing to give a speech, the person that has a lot of rajas in them, they would keep themselves busy, and they are doing this and doing that, all these actions, and all it's doing is just creating anxiety. It's building up this restlessness inside of them, which causes suffering. So the last state is called sattva. Sattva means that you have no tamas, no heavy thinking, and you have no restlessness. It actually means that your state of mind is clear. It's the absence of tamas and rajas, and you have a state of clarity. So that's really what we would like to get to, is to be more sattvic in our thinking. But the thing is that there's lots of factors that lead to suffering, and those forces are working within us. They're always at play, and they reduce our space inside. So when that happens, it means that we don't feel free, and ultimately we're limited. That's what ends up happening. So our yoga practice and reflection helps us to become alert, and we can start to recognize when there are forces of heaviness and lethargy. And you really do start noticing, oh man, I know I have to do this thing, and I just like cannot get myself going. And that's feeling tamasic. That's what that is, heavy. Or, recognizing when we have rajas, restless action. Like I'm just running around. I used to do this, you guys, when I was at university. I knew I had to write a paper, or I knew I had to do my homework. And so all of a sudden I would clean the house, like the whole house, not just one room. I would clean the entire house. It's like, oh, I better do that and get that done, because I had these restless feelings, anxiety around the task that I had to do, which was ultimately, I knew I had to do it, but I cleaned my whole house because I had this restless energy, right? I didn't know how to manage it in any other way. Sattva means clarity. And how do we get there? So one of the most important approaches that we can take is to start to notice when we're suffering, when we have pain, and when we have restrictions within. So you become the observer, you become the witness of it. It's not like we're going, oh, I don't want to feel that. We start looking at it and saying, well, what is that? Is that tamasic? Is that heavy? Or is it rajasic? Right? These are just different versions. These are the verb version of those words. So rajas makes you restless, right? Makes you run around frantically. So when you start recognizing that that's really a state of suffering, those both are states of suffering, then we can actually pull back and make better decisions for ourselves. So with practice, we become free of external concerns, and we no longer create suffering, pain, and restrictions for ourselves, right? Because you know what? In the world, there's always something to worry about. There's always something to be concerned about. So what happens when we no longer concern ourselves with it? We actually create a state of alignment with that divine part of ourselves, and now we have clarity. When you have clarity and when you are aligned, you then fall into what they call right action. You are taking right action every day. So this state, that there is an actual state where you have no concerns anymore, and it's called kavaya, right? So that's, you don't need to know the term. It's not that important. Just know that it is a state where you are no longer attached to the concerns. It's not your problem. It's not your problem. You know, who's, what is it that you really need to concern yourself with? Yourself, right? That's the only person you can change. So paying attention to your actions is important. So the practice that we're doing today is going to be involved in integrating and helping us to process so that we can remove anxiety, remove that restless stuff that's going on, and heaviness as well. But I want to also let you know that there's other ways of bringing lightness and clarity to ourselves. And those are in our diet. If you're interested in learning about that, reach out to me. But some of the heavy foods are going to be like meat, greasy, heavy oil type of foods, hard to digest foods. So raw foods, you guys, are hard to digest. That would fall into that category. Also processed foods. Meditation is another thing that you can integrate into your life, doing it in the morning and at night, 10 minutes, starting out with 10 minutes. And that will bring lightness and also the ability to pull back from whatever it is that's going on in the mind, right? Because the mind is what creates the suffering. And also practicing silence once in a while, designating, you know, hey, I'm going to take this hour once a week to just be silent and having real awareness around that silence and what it gives to you. It actually fills you up. So those are other ways of creating lightness so that you can move into that state of being more objective, of being more connected to what's happening in the qualities of your mind. So those are the three qualities of mind, the gunas. And like I said, they're complicated because they're not, you know, it's hard to grasp. These are concepts, but they are real. They happen. We can all relate to when we have lethargy, when we cannot get going, we cannot take care of something. And we can all relate to when we have those rajasic type of mind thoughts, right? When are we being influenced by rajas? And then sattvic, when you have clarity of mind. Meditation is an opportunity to have a sattvic way of being. Practicing silence is also going to cultivate that sattvic way of being. So that is basically it for the three gunas. There's other stuff connected to it because suffering is connected to the term dukkha. Dukkha means suffering. So that's a whole nother topic. Dukkha relates to avijja, which we have talked about. Also a whole nother topic. And how do those two relate? That's something that we're going to address in another class. So for now, let's do a practice that helps us with the qualities of the mind. And we'll get started with that.